The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus is going through the region between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered a village, 10 lepers approached him. Keeping their distance, he called out, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." When he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priest." And as they went, they were made clean. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He prostrated himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus asked, "Were not 10 made clean? But the other 9, where are they? Was none of them found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ. Perhaps because I'm married to a linguist, someone with training in linguistics, I've long been very sensitive to words, to language, to the derivation of how we use words as well as individual words. So it was with some interest that I read about maybe 2 or perhaps 3 weeks ago a study by a linguist who had been researching the use and the frequency of the use of the word gratitude and its cognates like grateful and gratefulness. And this researcher discovered that the use in literature, in written correspondence, in public discourse of grateful and its related words has decreased 60% since the turn of the last century. Isn't that fascinating? That in barely over 100 years, we are using the word grateful 60% less than we used to. Now, I think perhaps that points to something profound sociologically, but I'm not a sociologist, so I'm not going to get into that. But it comes to my mind, that reality, that fact, that research comes to my mind today because of this gospel we've just heard, this moment that is reasonably well known, although it's not, one of the big stories. It's not the prodigal son, it's not the Good Samaritan, it's not raising Lazarus, but still, this is a pretty meaty, pretty important moment in Jesus' ministry. What is happening here is that Jesus is actually traveling back toward Jerusalem, and he's going on the border between Galilee and Samaria, sort of the boondocks, if you will. And as he's traveling, he encounters in a village 10 lepers, and they're standing far off, as they were enjoined by the Mosaic law to do. The Mosaic law said that lepers were supposed to stay about 50 yards away from the public. They were supposed to wear a particular kind of clothing, and they were supposed to yell out as they walked the streets, "Unclean, unclean," so that anybody who couldn't see them would know that there was a leper or there were lepers nearby. And apparently that's what the lepers in today's gospel are doing. They have kept their distance from Jesus, we are told, and they cry out to him, "Have mercy on us." They must have heard something about him, maybe gotten word that he has some special healing power. Maybe they even heard about the fact that just a little while before, Jesus had healed another leper in a one-to-one encounter. And there, Jesus actually lays hands on the man who suffers from leprosy. But for whatever reason, they do keep their distance as they're supposed to, and they cry out to him, "Have mercy on us." And what does Jesus do? He just says simply, "Go to the priests, and there be certified that you have been made well." He hasn't done anything. He hasn't waved any magic wand. He hasn't spit on the soil and rubbed any mud in their eyes or hands or anything like that. He has simply said, "Go see the priests, be certified. And apparently, as they are walking away doing exactly what he has asked them or told them to do, they discover that the leprosy, or whatever condition they suffer from, has begun to be healed. And one of them turns back. Just one. He turns back and he throws himself at Jesus' feet. He prostrates himself on the ground, praising God. I'm sure his disciples, Jesus' disciples, were probably standing there looking at this guy thinking, okay, I understand, you're grateful, but I mean, let's not carry it away here. I mean, how unepiscopal, to throw yourself on the dirt and to be hollering praise to God. I mean, for crying out loud. And of course, Jesus asks the question that I probably would ask, weren't there 10? Where are the other 9? Now, most scholars hear that critically, like, where are the other 9? Why didn't they come back to give thanks? A certain author I read many years ago said, but let's think about those 9 for a minute. Maybe they were doing exactly what Jesus had told them to. They were on their way to the priests. Or maybe one was so overwhelmed that he had to go off and hide somewhere to process what had happened. And maybe one was a young mother who was so eager to get home to her family, healed and whole, that she didn't come back to give thanks. Maybe a couple of them discovered that they actually didn't really want to be healed, having become accustomed to their previous life. We don't really know what the other 9 did. All we know is that one came back. And not only was that man a leper, but he was a Samaritan, which was, 2 strikes against him in terms of the perspective of Jews. And he throws himself at Jesus' feet, and Jesus says, go on your way, your faith has made you well, has made you whole, has healed you. And that's what the Greek actually means, has saved you. Which raises the interesting question, why was this one man the only one to whom Jesus says, your faith has made you well, has healed you, has saved you? And that's where we come back to gratitude. Isn't it true, in a very real sense, that we don't fully appropriate and possess and understand and even own something until we express gratitude for the gift? It's one thing simply to receive something. It's another thing to acknowledge it and to express thankfulness for what we have received. And I think that it is that very attitude and that reaction of the Samaritan leper that prompts Jesus to say, the others, in essence, have been cured, but you have been healed. You have been made whole in body, soul, mind, and spirit. You have been saved. Again, what the word means. Not just cured, but made whole. And isn't gratitude an important part of that experience and indeed of faith itself? We have so much to fear, so much that can unnerve us, so much that can distress us in our current world and surely in all different eras and epochs. We have a lot that is distressing these days, don't we? And even in our own individual lives, we all know sorrow and trial, tragedy and fear. But we all also are so blessed, are so richly gifted and graced by God that I fear sometimes we lose sight of that and we forget how much we have to rejoice in. And ultimately, that's what we do every Sunday here, isn't it? 3 times every Sunday morning, we gather in this place and we go up to this altar where we make thanksgiving. That's what the Eucharist means. That's just a fancy Greek word for giving thanks. And every single day during the week, we make thanks. We give thanks here at the altar of Holy Comforter. But it's not just the liturgical expression of thanks that is so critical in our lives. Gratitude is the natural response to grace. Karl Barth, great theologian from the last century, said that grace and gratitude go together like heaven and earth. That grace precedes gratitude like a voice, the echo. And that gratitude follows grace like thunder follows lightning. Isn't that marvelous? Isn't that true, though? that unless we express and acknowledge our thankfulness, we haven't fully accepted the gift. And it is gratitude that can turn a normal moment into something rich and remarkable. Gratitude is not an attitude, it is a choice. It's deciding to acknowledge and accept and give thanks for what we have received. Gratitude can turn a meal into a feast, a house into a home, an acquaintance into a friend. Gratitude makes it possible for us fully to know and rejoice in the ridiculous ways in which we have all been blessed. A man named Sean Aker, who is a psychiatrist at Yale, a young and very engaging scholar, studies the question of gratitude and thankfulness and says that something as simple as articulating out loud 3 items at the beginning of a day for which one is grateful can change one's entire orientation and perspective. Just 3 things in the morning. How hard is that? To give thanks to God for 3 things we have received. I know the first thing that went through my mind this morning was 5-2 Cubs over Giants. And I think that God is on our side finally. And I say that as somebody who used to live in San Francisco, by the way. But how hard is it to express, not just as a reaction, but as an orientation, as a choice, how grateful we are for all that God has given us. In Hebrew, the word for praise and thanksgiving is the same, yada. Yada. So in Hebrew, to give praise is also to thank the one to whom we are praying. But the word actually means to hold out one's hands. Isn't that a great image also? That to give thanks and to praise is to hold out our hands. Think of the posture that Pastor Heath will have in just a few moments at the altar. This same attitude of hands uplifted, offering to God who we are and asking that God fill us with grace and peace, joy, delight, and hope. Isn't that the ideal posture for expressing thanks and receiving the gifts that God so ridiculously, inexplicably bestows upon us? So on this gorgeous day, which we didn't earn and we don't deserve, in this beautiful place, which we didn't build and we don't deserve, as children of God, a gift that goes beyond comprehension or language, what more can we do than simply hold out our hands to say and to live, thank you.